We called it Outrun the Darkness for that reason. It's because we know that when you shine a light on things like mental health, on things like the power that running and community have to promote positive mental health, is those stories come out. Like anybody who has been out in a trail, you know that you may not know that person's last name. You may not know how old that person is, but you know if they were abused as a child, if they had an alcoholic parent, what they're running from, what they're running towards, why they started running. You know the deepest, darkest things about them because of this thing called running.
And welcome back. We have John Shep joining today from Ontario. John, thanks so much for taking some time to chat.
No, I appreciate it. Appreciate the platform. I've been diving into some of your back episodes, and you know what? I'm appreciating the opportunity to come on and talk about Outrun the Darkness.
Awesome. Well, we're looking forward to it. Mental health is a topic that I love talking about. And when I started this podcast, it was quite stigmatized. And these days it doesn't seem to be. So making a small dent in the world, one podcast episode at a time, talking about stuff that matters. So first question is always a tough one. And that question is, who is John?
Well, for this purposes, I'm a runner. I'm a father. I'm a husband to an amazing wife. I try to be an amazing husband to said wife, but and then I am a lead ambassador with Athletics Ontario. So that's our provincial governing body that's responsible for everything road and trail, track and field in Ontario, make sure that races are sanctioned and safe. And I came to that from even before I was born. So my grandfather was an Olympic level track coach with Athletics Ontario. And then my mom was an official, and now she leads up our national body. And then sort of when my grandfather passed away, guess about 4.5 years ago, I kind of wanted to continue on the family legacy. So for the purposes of this, but then also with Outrun the Darkness being a mental health project, I come in as a recoverer from an eating disorder, from a mental health crisis, but then also currently as a special ed department head. So I run the special ed department in my high school. And so, I mean, mental health and mental crises and all of this stuff, I mean, it's a daily thing that I see. So wear a number of different hats, some of which are a little wetter than others when it's raining outside. But I mean, honestly, I can't separate any of those things from the person that I am. All of them informs and gives me the power and empathy to be able to have these conversations. Because I mean, you mentioned off the top, like mental health is less stigmatized than it was perhaps 5 years ago, 10 years ago. But in having these conversations, I'm actually finding that to some extent, we've almost taken for granted that we were having these conversations. It's almost like, oh, okay, we talked about mental health for a few years and now we're good. And I'm finding there's almost a bit of a regression over the past couple of years. I don't know if you've seen that too.
I don't know that I have, but you know, there was a lot of talk 2019, 2020, 21, and maybe to your point, the regression is like we're not seeing it as much, but maybe that's my takeaway is like because it's happening and the conversations are out there, and so the need or the discussion about the need to have the conversation is not as public. But like speaking to you as a Canadian, I remember the number of years ago the Bell Let's Talk program, which I'm sure you know intimately. And for those who are here in America and haven't seen it, Bell is one of the cell phone providers, and there was a campaign that ran for a number of years where if you tweeted with a certain hashtag, they would donate, I think, 5 cents or something like that to mental health charities and support. And it was a big campaign with a lot of NHL players and a lot of the teams in Toronto and Ottawa and I think it was particularly those two cities. We're really getting behind it, and I don't know. I haven't seen that in a couple of years. To your point.
Yeah, it's usually the end of January. It's actually right around my birthday. Usually it's the end of January. And yeah, it's this coast to coast celebration, and they do it differently. It's text messaging and tweeting and hashtags. And yeah, they do improve the conversation about mental health, but it really is that like, it's the day, right? Like it's the end of January. They talk about it, and then the campaigns outside of it aren't aren't continuing on as conversations.
Yeah.
Currently we have, I mean, there's mental health for women, and there's just coming out of Black History Month. There's sort of Black mental health awareness, and so there are these weeks or chunks of time in which mental health does become prioritized in the atmosphere and the conversation. And I guess the hope is that we can continue the conversation. I mean, Outrun the Darkness, the project that we'll talk about that I launched at the beginning of February, is leading into the end of May, and then sort of continuing on after that with the documentary release. And so it's a chance to have that conversation in long form for months on end, and hopefully spark even more conversations.
I think the need to have the continuity is critical, right? It's one thing to have a month or a week or a day or something like that, and it's another to have a sustained campaign. So it's great to hear that that's happening through some of the initiatives that you're working on. We're going to get to all of that, Outrun the Darkness and more. I often will ask, how did running find you? How did you find running? It sounds like it was a family thing and you were destined to become a runner. So let's say, you did, and what happens next? How did you're doing these spectacular things in a single weekend. How did the family experience of running turn into you doing ultras and marathons and consecutive, big days out there?
Yeah, it's funny. I wasn't a runner until I fell off. Like I was the kid in grade 12. We had to do the 12-minute run in grade 12, and I ran behind one of the trees, pretended to fall down, got a bleeding nose just to like completely dodge it, right? So I was around road running and track and field from, I mean, I was running results up and down the stairs, probably just to help burn off like all the energy when I was like 6 years old, right? And they gave us the timing clock, and we were jumping in pole vault pits and jumping in the puddle that the steeplechase was. So I was always around it. And then my mom ran a sports marketing firm that had Timex, the watch company, which actually the tagline of takes a licking and keeps on ticking, like, isn't that just ultra marathoning in a
Right.
nutshell,
Yeah.
right?
Or life. Yeah.
And so I worked with her for, I guess, 2002 until 2017. And so that was my involvement, really, was doing the road racing circuit and being an official or being in sales and marketing. But I didn't really put on a pair of shoes and run until after I got out of the hospital. So I was 2007, I was working the Ottawa Marathon. I was about a year into the worst part of my disordered eating. Like, I was in, trigger warning, folks, like, I'm a 6'1" male. I was 135 pounds. I looked skeletal, and I was sustaining 1,200 calories a day, which, I mean, for context, I just went out for a 2-hour run with a friend and put 600 calories down. So like, it kind of puts in context the amount that I'm putting in my body. And so I'm working the Ottawa Marathon, and which is one of the largest road races in Canada, and passed out in the bathroom, smacked my head on the floor, gave myself a concussion. And so that weekend in 2007 finished with me not working the Ottawa Marathon, not finishing the Ottawa Marathon, but like wandering the streets of Ottawa with a concussion in this like daze, because not only was I underweight, but because back at that time they thought OxyContin was this miracle drug, the headaches that I was getting from being underweight, they're like, hey, take this OxyContin. And so me, addictive personality, again, runner and eating disorder history, is like, okay, this thing's cool. 10 milligrams feels really good. Let's take 50. And so like between that and the concussion and being underweight, it was like, that was rock bottom. So fortunately at that time, I had a really great family doctor that, while he prescribed the OxyContin, because I mean, the entire medical industry at that point was like, here's this miracle drug, people can't get addicted on it. And then they're like, oh yeah, by the way, it's twice as addictive as heroin. And so got checked into a local mental health ward at home, and then started to recover. And I didn't recover in the hospital by any stretch. Like, it was 2 weeks. I somewhat got stable, but I went in at 135 pounds. And the only thing different when I left was I was still 135 pounds, but I'd cold turkeyed off the Oxycontin because it was sort of a requirement of me leaving. And God's honest truth, like, if you don't have sympathy or empathy for anyone who's in the throes of addiction, try going cold turkey off 50 milligrams of Oxy in 48 hours. Like, it was, I I was blessed to have an amazing nursing staff there, that got me through that weekend. Like, it was crying, sweating, DTs, like the worst of it. But I left the hospital the same weight, but with this mentality of, I need to recover in order to continue living. And it was kind of two choices. It's like I could stop everything and recover and then potentially live, or I can do them simultaneously. And so that's kind of why I've phrased it as this life of recovery. And still 19 years later, I am living a life of recovery. It is ongoing. And so back to your question about how running came into it, is I'd had to drop a class my last year of university because, again, loopy is all hell. And so I had to take that class. I had to take kind of an extra semester of university to finish up, but I had all this free time because it was one class. So I got a part-time job, and I went to the gym, and both of those things changed my life. And I do not say that mildly. Like, the part-time job I had was working bar at a restaurant. And yes, the guy with the eating disorder went to go work at a restaurant. And oh, by the way, then met his best friends at said restaurant and kind of his wife, who was a chef and was a chef for 15 years. So, like, irony abound. But then also I found the gym, and to warm up is I would be doing 10 minutes on the treadmill. And that's literally where it started. Is it was like 5-6 days a week. I was doing 10 minutes on the treadmill, and then I was hitting the weights. And then it sort of just snowballed. It was, I'm going to sign up for a 5K that was a part of the hospital that I was in. And so ran the 5K. Lo and behold, I'm back working the Ottawa Marathon, and the guy at Timex who I was working with, Dave Lowe, he's like, "Hey, I threw up my back. I can't run this 10K." I'm like, "Yeah, okay, cool. I'll run a 10K, strip my jeans off, put my shorts on," and ran his fastest 10K ever. And sorry, Ottawa Marathon. Yes, I did kind of bandit a bit, but it was the only time I did it. And then it was the snowball, right? Like, it was the never going to do a half marathon, and then did a half, and then never going to do a marathon, do the marathon. Found this amazing thing called ultras, and then I was in it like a dirty shirt. Like, it was what I love about the trail and ultra scene is we're all homers, right? Like, you will, I'm sure, speak with the same fondness of your road and trail and ultra scene as I will of the folks in Ontario. And it's our home base, and I couldn't not love it. I mean, that led me into running, and this past 4 years working with Athletics Ontario and being able to network with the running community at a different level, with the people in the community, with the run crews, with the race directors, with the runners themselves. Like, how do you not love this thing?
So you fall off the deep end quickly, as many of us have. How have you been able to protect it as something that's strong and positive versus like another addictive path to go down? And I say that as somebody who has similar tendencies to, go all in on certain things and maybe go too far sometimes. So I'm familiar to a degree with like how the brain works in that department. But I'm curious for you, how have you, right? Because like I did a podcast with Ken Rideout, for example, and he talked about how he did 10 miles a day while he was stopping drugs, and that was how he got sober. He went out and did 10 miles a day, and he was like, now I'm addicted to running, and now I do it every single day, and I can't not do it. So how do you do it in a way that's healthy, or are you doing it in a way that's healthy? What did the initial you know uh, deep end dive look like?
So I'm a wrestling nerd at heart. I grew up with it. Like, Attitude Era, Stone Cold Steve Austin, like that was me, right? And so I have an affinity for quoting both Roddy Piper and Dusty Rhodes. And so Dusty Rhodes had this quote, and it was something to the effect of riding the edge of a lightning bolt. You are 100% right. Is me and running could very well become disordered. It could be a getting burned by the lightning bolt. But if I don't not play
But you
with
need it.
fire,
It needs some type of stimulation like that. Yeah.
yeah, and if it's not going to be running, it's going to be working. Like I've worked jobs before we had kids. I worked jobs where if my wife was at the restaurant, I'd look outside, see if the parking lot was empty enough, and be like, nah, I can come back in. Like I can go back up and keep going. And so I know, to your point, my tendencies of if I'm going to have joy in my life, that job was phenomenal. This thing called running is amazing. If I'm going to engage in these things, I need to have boundaries and guidelines. And one of the amazing things that running gives me is a relationship with food that allows me to evolve, right? Like I saw food as the enemy. I saw food as something to control, to restrict, to get high from. Like I just listened to the Your Diet Sucks podcast.
Shout out to Zoe and Kylie. Yeah, they're fantastic.
Like I was listening to them and they talked about the addictive quality of an eating disorder. And I'd never heard it described that way, but like the high that you get from not eating and from controlling was it was a high. It was the OxyContin. And not only was it like the OxyContin, but it was like, I can now control something, but then also get a release and a high from it. Like this is my perfect friend at this point in time. Right. And so running, I need to make sure it doesn't get disordered. So it's things like training plans. It's things like making sure I'm fueling enough and pushing my calories to where they need to be and seeing food as the ability to do those things. And, but I also know that it's, if running becomes over dominant, then it takes away from who I am as all those things that you asked me at the beginning of the podcast, like, who are you? And if I run too much, I'm not a good enough dad and I'm not a good enough husband and it takes away from my job. But if I run that right amount, if I find that edge of the lightning bolt and I'm riding that appropriately, it makes me a better husband. I'm more present. I'm more calm with my kids. They see dad as a better dad. I'm much more effective at my job. I'm much more thoughtful and articulate, and I have distance in meetings from my initial reaction that I can sort of see the whole picture. And then food, right? I can look at food. I mean, you referred to the weekend that I just did. So I did the Goggins challenge of 4x4x48. And then capped it off with one of our local half marathons, the Chili Half Marathon up in Burlington, Ontario. So about an hour west of Toronto. And by the end of it, crushed with joy. 2 burgers and large onion rings, large fries. And it initially used to be, and this is where the lightning bolt thing comes in, is it initially used to be, I could only eat those things after a run. Like when I first started, and this is why I embrace the opportunity that run gives me and why I continue to run is because, yes, initially that first time I had Harvey's was after a 50 miler, and it was the first time I'd had it probably in 15 years. But now I can have that and I don't even have to run. So why running for me is worth it is because it gives me the opportunity to have exposure therapy. So it gives me the opportunity to today go on that 2-hour run and have 600 calories in gels or in chews. It's actually Exact Nutrition. I don't know if y'all have it, but it's like a gel bar almost. Doesn't freeze in the winter. It was phenomenal. But I had about 600 calories of those, and I couldn't have done that without running. I couldn't have pizza with my wife after doing a talk at a local run club if I hadn't first done it with running. And so running gives me a purpose to pushing myself with food and seeing it as fuel. And then the exposure therapy allows me to then do it in my regularly scheduled programming. And so that's why riding the edge of the lightning bolt is worth it, because if I do it right, and I think I am at this point in time, I think we are, with between myself and my community and my wife and my family, it's much better and fulsome and colorful of a life than if I just didn't engage in it at all. And this is kind of the whole like recovery while you live thing. Is riding the edge of the lightning bolt is recovering while you live. If I were to wait to recover, I wouldn't be able to use running as this exposure therapy. My life would be much safer and would be much more stable, but a hell of a lot less colorful if I didn't open myself up to running and the community. And that's been the crux of my recovery, has been going from being in service of the world, being this robot savior hero type that just does for others, versus now where I've opened myself up and to all the feelings, like, and anyone who knows this, right? Like, you choose to open yourself up and you're going to get hurt. You're going to get stepped on. You're going to run in puddles, but the joy that you're going to experience by opening yourself up and being not just for the world, but of the world. I mean, that's been my last 4 years with Athletics Ontario, is engaging in this running community and seeing that riding the edge of the lightning bolt is so incredibly worth it.
I love that analogy, the riding the edge of the lightning bolt and then the exposure therapy. I've talked a lot about how running can be this sandbox of how do we experiment and learn and grow in a low stakes environment. And I'm realizing that it's not low stakes for everyone. And there are a lot of decisions that are made in the act of running that have stakes, particularly if you're having hamburgers and whatnot, pun intended. But yeah, it's a good reframe. How did you get to that place? Was it truly just doing it over and over again till you got comfortable enough to do it over and over again? How did you push yourself to do that? Was it really just like, at this point I don't have any other choice, I simply must? And did you like will yourself? Was it like a fake it till you make it type experience?
It has been exceptionally intentional. Like, it is therapy. It's therapeutic, I will say.
Yep, sure.
And that's been in collaboration with therapists, that it's I've been able to say, okay, what do I need to do X? I mean, it might be, I want to be comfortable enough that if my son gives me an Oreo, or my kids are having Oreos with my parents and they're having tea and Oreos, that I want to be able to just do it. I don't want to have to worry about it. I don't want to have to think about it. And so how do I do that? Well, I eat a crap ton of Oreos during a 4x4x48 challenge. and yeah, it's exposure therapy. And I'm not done. That's why I'm saying, like, I'm living a life of recovery. And I mean, my wife has just gotten a new job, and so we're going out to celebrate. And I sort of gave her three options. Like, okay, we could go Friday for lunch, we could go Saturday with the kids, or we could go Monday for dinner. And you pick. 3, 4, 5 years ago, I couldn't be that flexible with it. I would want to know the day, or I would want to know the meal, or I'd still be able to engage in it. But the comfort that I have now with the lack of control, and to say, okay, let's do this and find joy in it, that only has come through that very intentional exposure therapy.
So you're drawn to this sense of control, and at the same time, you're doing a sport that is outrageously out of our control, right? People always say control the controllables, but you sign up for 100K and you're signing up for an uncontrollable experience at it to some degree, right? You can do the training, you can practice the fueling, you can make sure that your gear works. You like your shoes, whatever, but like, you can't control the weather, you can't control the other people around you, you can't control how your stomach is going to feel, you can't control, that they actually forgot to stock this aid station and now I'm totally screwed. Like, there's so much that's outside of your control. How do you grapple with the control and the lack of control particularly as the races get longer, and then as you're doing another event the next day?
Well, I think you just mentioned it, is control the controllables. And it's putting the race plan in place. So I'm now 800 milers under my belt and 200 miler. And all of those, we had a plan going into place, right? It's what are you going to eat? When you get tired, are you going to, so having branched chain amino acids and then having caffeine and having some extra food. And it's I don't think it's necessarily been the outside world that I've wanted to control so much as my internal world. And because I've always been, it's funny, my daughter comes by it honestly, but she had asked, I want to say about 4 years ago, she's just turned 8, and she's like, okay, what's a family rule? And I was like, okay, well, you want rules? And it was like little things, like make sure you close the door or turn off the lights. Or I was like, no, if we got family rules, we're doing big ones. And it's like, okay, rule number 1, Sheps are kind. Figured that's a pretty nice one. What's the next rule? Sheps don't panic. Her lips to God's ears. And so it's controlling the controllables, and then understand that there's a hell of a lot outside of your control, and you just go with it. If you know, I mean, trying to be as present and thoughtful with, okay, so I've taken care of my nutrition, I've taken care of my caffeine, so therefore I can navigate the unknowns and I can troubleshoot. The first night of my 200-mile race last July, it was 3 of us running together, buddy Scott and Leo, who I just met that day pretty much, or the day before. And my feet got bogged, like just absolute soaked. And we still, I mean, we were what, 35, 40 miles into this 200-mile race. And they're like, don't worry, just stop, put your feet up, warm your feet up, make sure they get all the water out of them. Socks, same thing, put rocks in my socks, heated them up. And so by controlling the things we could, when it came to the troubleshooting piece, we were able to navigate it. And I mean, I say the same thing to kids when they're writing essays. It's like, you can know how to write an essay. You can know the content about what you're writing. So whether it's history or English text or what have you, and you can kind of plan for, these are the 5 or 6 topics that might come up on said essay question, but you're never going to know exactly what that essay question is going to be. And that level of unknown is a good thing. Like, you need to be able to plan for, I might not see a bear in the woods. I might see a porcupine. I might see a skunk. What am I going to do? I got to tell you, I've seen both a bear in the woods and a porcupine. Porcupine scared the bejesus out of me, because like, this thing had no F's to give. It's just middle of the trail. But I mean, besides the point, it was, so yes, it's going back to your point, control the controllables, and just Sheps don't panic, and just trying to troubleshoot the things when they do come up. You asked about control. I know myself enough that I can mess with myself. So for a guy who worked for a watch company for 15 years, I don't wear a watch when I run, for that purpose, because I'm the idiot in the parking lot who's like, it's 9.9. I need to get to 10, or my pace should be this, or I said I'd run for 2 hours and it's an hour and 55. Like, I will go out and specifically go 5 or 10 minutes more or less than I should, just to screw with myself, because I know that that's where the growth happens. So I don't necessarily expect that I'm going to be able to control all of it. But yeah, being exceptionally thoughtful ahead of time, leaning on, I mean, my wife's been my crew person for most of my ultras, and she and I coming up with a game plan, and evolving that as years go on, that's exceptionally helpful. So knowing the knowledge that I've got that to lean on gives me the ability to go, to your point, to these unknowns and just sort of say, I'm going to be able to deal, because yeah, Sheps don't panic, and we've done the best we can.
Speaking of going to the unknown and doing hard things, talk to me about Outrun the Darkness and where the concept for this came from, and what led you to even reaching out to tell this story.
So I mentioned the running community, and I I joked with my wife that my friends in high school got me in different trouble than my running friends do, and I don't know which gets me hurt less, but it's just different.
Yeah.
So I was supporting. There's a gentleman Yahtzee who was doing a 51.9K run to raise money for homeless individuals. And we'd never met the guy, but because the running community is amazing, a couple of buddies and I went out and paced him for this 52K run, 52-ish, 51.9. And I was telling this story about how the Ottawa Marathon, I crashed and burned. And 10 years later, I went and I did the Ottawa Marathon for the first, and at this point, only time, as kind of this celebration. And then I moved from that into the ultra space. And so the Sulphur Springs 100K, which is Ontario's only Western States qualifier, hint, hint, nudge, nudge for anybody who does want to come up here. It's a tremendous race. It is one of the gems of Canadian running, I will say. And I moved to there because I wanted to go longer. So sort of did their 50K, 50 miler, 100K, 100 miler a couple of times, but they're on the same weekend. It's always Ottawa Marathon weekend. So as we're running with Yahtzee and as we're pacing him, I'm telling this story to a couple of buddies of mine. And I was like, yeah, 20 years, it'd be really cool. So this would be 2027. It'd be really cool to do the Sulphur Springs 100K on the Saturday, drive to Ottawa. So it's about a 6-hour drive for everybody, and then do the Ottawa Marathon the next day. And my buddy Bernard looks at me. He's like, well, why not now? I'm like, well, because it's 19 years. It's an odd number. It doesn't have the poetry to it. And then, I mean, as all good/bad ideas evolve, within a couple hours, it's like, look, we got friends who'd come out and do this. My parents aren't getting any younger. It's like, yeah, this seems awesome. So that's where the idea kind of generated from, was having the support of my runner brothers. So the two gentlemen that came out, one's Bernard Barquez, who's so entrenched in the Toronto running community, and Marvin Mendoza, who ran 26 marathons last year to raise money for a local hospital, and who has been an exceptional friend over the last year. I met him through the podcast and have gone on more runs with him than I have with many individuals. And so they're going to come out and do the runs as well and be there for the drive. And that's kind of where this came from, was this idea that I want to celebrate my recovery. I want to celebrate positive mental health. I want to show people the power that running and community have to be a bastion for positive mental health. But then also be able to tell the story. And if I'm going to do this, I want it to be for something more than me. I know that running is going to help me. I know that community is going to help me. But I also know a kid a week who's going through some sort of mental health crisis at my school. And those are the kids I know about, right? Those are the kids I have relationships with. Like, I see, and I mean, we started the podcast talking about that mental health is in a better space than it used to be. And it sure as hell is. Like 20 years ago, the fact that I was in a mental health ward as opposed to an eating disorder clinic as a male, like, speaks to the growth and understanding of it. But I'm still working with kids who were talking to their parents about, oh, it's not mental health, it's just stress. They're not anxious, they're just stressed. It's like, I've seen your kid check under the table 5 times because they're worried about missing something. And if you look at the backs of their hands, they're scratching it incessantly. Like, that's anxiety, that's mental health. The panic attack that kids have had, and I've counseled kids who are like 2 hours into a panic attack and all they can do is look at my feet because they're that hijacked. Or during COVID, the kids who are like, I know that you can't help do my work, and that's okay. But can you just be on the Google Meet? Can you just be there? I won't show my screen. I just want to know that somebody is there. And so for all of those kids that I know I work with, and for all of the kids that I know that don't have somebody to talk to, and the adults and the runners who similarly don't have somebody to talk to about mental health. That's why I wanted to do this project. Was I want to shine light on this. I mean, we called it Outrun the Darkness for that reason. Is because we know that when you shine a light on things like mental health, on things like the power that running and community have to promote positive mental health, is those stories come out. Like anybody who has been out in a trail, you know that you may not know that person's last name. You may not know how old that person is, but you know if they were abused as a child, if they had an alcoholic parent, what they're running from, what they're running towards, why they started running. You know the deepest, darkest things about them because of this thing called running. And that needs a greater platform. We're talking about this on a running podcast, and I would suspect that most people who are listening to us know damn well what we're talking about. But that's why we're doing this. And I say we because it is, yes, my runner brothers, but we've also got a videographer who, Kosake Media, again, amazing track and field and running videographer who's taking this on as a passion project because he values the importance of mental health. And so the hope is that, yes, we are talking to runners about this, but that we're also talking to people at large about the fact that, like, look what running in community can do. And this may not be a running in community thing for you, but what is your community? Is it bocce? Is it pickleball? Is it a book club? Like, what community can you leverage for your positive mental health? And then for your kids, what community can they leverage? And not the online community, not the social media, but the blood, the sweat, the leaning on each other, the hugging each other, the crying with each other, like the people and the blood that you can lean on in order to have positive mental health. That's why we're doing this. That's why I figured, you know what, my story, I know what's going to help me, but how can I have it help other people? And so thank you. I appreciate you for saying yes when I reached out and be like, let's tell this story. Let's amplify this message, because I know I'm in a privileged position. I am a relatively well-off male who is fairly confident in my ability to say, I'm nuts and I don't care, and I want to tell people about it. Like, I mean, we're all nuts a little bit, but some of us just get help. And I picked my crazy, right? My crazy is running. My crazy is this community. And I do that because otherwise my crazy is going to pick me. Like my disordered eating, my hypervigilance, that would pick me. So that's where Outrun the Darkness came from, was how can I be of service to the world?
Amazing story. Two things. One, you need a friend with an airplane. And two, what must be true for this to be a success? How do you ensure that this achieves the goal that you're looking to achieve?
You know, it's a good question. And in the running community, I was fortunate enough to reach out to some exceptional folks who have done work similar to this. And they asked, what's your goal? And I was like, you know what? If I get 10,000 eyes on this and not a dollar, great. I would much rather that than $10,000 and no eyes. And I would say that it has already borne fruit. I've been able to go out to some local run clubs and have this conversation. I've had people reach out on social media and say, you know what, I thank you for telling this story. People who I've known for years who have come out and said, you know what, thank you. People in my school. I stood up in a staff meeting and I said, hey, y'all have a safe space here for me. And I want to share some really cool stuff that I'm doing outside of here. Not because I'm being a shill and not because anything like that, but because, like, I want to spread this message. And I've had people in my own building be like, thank you for saying this. Like, we've been going through this, or we really appreciate your story and we appreciate you telling this. So I would say it's already borne fruit. What it would look like to really sort of go places is we've got some partners that have come on between ultra running and Exact Nutrition, who I mentioned earlier, and CLA, another brand. And if they're able to push this out on their channels, I really do think that it has the power to spread that message and spark conversations. And it might not be them reaching out to me, but it might be them reaching out to the person down the hall who's like, and I had this 10 or so years ago where somebody just stopped me and said, "Hey, I haven't seen you smile in a while. Is everything okay?" If doing this helps somebody do that for somebody else, like that's the goal. Is we may, yes, I am seeing this bear fruit in the small conversations that we're having, and I hope it bears fruit with respect to the filming of the documentary. All of those things that I'm not going to be able to see, where it's the plus one
The
or the
ripple effect.
right, like, and then what do? Right, they help somebody who then 10 years down the line they go and canoe across Lake Ontario for mental health. Right, like there, that's the goal. The 10,000 eyes goal. That's the goal.
So the 100K plus the marathon ends up being a spectacular physical and mental feat to accomplish. What has to be true in order to do the thing, right? Because I don't think that it's required to perform well in order to raise awareness to what you're doing, but it sure does help.
Yeah. When we registered for the Ottawa Marathon, they asked as part of the registration
What's your
page,
time?
it actually was like, are you going to run it or are you going to run walk or are you going to walk it? And I kind of had to take a pause. I was like, I don't really know at this
might be
point.
7 hours. Yeah.
So I think the completing it is the goal, and there's going to be hard times. And so I know, okay, so nitty gritty running nerd stuff. For me, the limiting factors are going to be twofold. One is how well do my quads hold up? So it is a trail race. It is going to have the eccentric loading on my quads. And I've also previously done a back-to-back weekend. It was a 50K on the Saturday and a marathon on the Sunday. So what did me in there was my hamstrings were too weak. And so what happened was my quads took the beating during the 50K. And as a result, I went into the marathon the next day with sore quads, which then meant that my knees pulled. So like my quads had shrunk and then my knee took the brunt of it. So it wasn't, I mean, dispelling the myth, it wasn't my knees that were hurting, folks. It was the fact, it was the downward effect of my patellofemoral pain occurred because my quads weren't taking the damage because my hamstrings weren't taking the damage. So for the last 3 months, I've been very diligent about strengthening my hamstrings, doing hamstring curls and curls with a Swiss ball, straight leg deadlifts, just to make sure that my hamstrings are strong enough so that my quads don't have to take it. So that's kind of number one, trying to figure out the hamstring weakness. Also, now that some of the snow's defrosting, going out on some of the larger hills that we've got and doing some eccentric downhills. And so just being really training my quads to take the downhill damage. And then the sort of third piece is the recovery in between. So it's, I mean, we're going to be sitting in a car. So it's probably going to be massage guns. I love recovery tights, compression recovery tights. I used those when I did the Goggins challenge this past weekend. And even in between rounds, like 2 hours, did a lot of good. The food thing is the one I'm not 100% sure on. And it's not even necessarily like the disordered eater is weird about food. But I guess I'll ask you the question because I am struggling. Typically after 100K, that's my like, I'm going to crush a pizza and ice cream and Oreos. I'm going to have the Harveys. I'm going to have some amazing, like we've got some amazing different cultures, diversity up here. So like amazing Indian food or Ethiopian food or something like that. But knowing that's in my stomach the day before, you're getting the regurg and you're getting the acid reflux. So I guess I'm still trying to figure that out. You got any suggestions food wise for the in-betweens?
Yeah, pizza. I think that's got to be the move. I mean, the answer is really like whatever works for you the night before a long run. And I tend to have really strong long runs after eating pizza or burger and fries. And so something like that is going to do double duty of being like really dense to help recover from the 100K. again, assuming like you're able to stomach that after doing 100K, but also that works for you the night of a long run. The first 50K I finished, I had a whole pizza and a burrito like within 3 hours. And could I have gone for a run the next day? Probably not. But did it sit well? Yeah, it was great. So that's where I think I would go. I would also look at liquid calories and things like tart cherry juice and even sports drink following the race and the morning of the next the Ottawa Marathon. We got to get you connected with Hyperice and see if they can get you some boots or some of the calf sleeves you can wear in the car as well, because that would certainly help, and you can do it while you're wearing the compression tights as well.
Well, and so thank you for the pizza burger suggestion. I think in my head, I'd been picturing replicating doing back-to-back runs and eating in between, but I like your idea of just doing it before a big run to desensitize, because that's also a little more manageable, as I don't have to then plan 2 runs. I can plan one. I do love the sports drink idea. I had been considering milkshake, but I think at this point, if like getting like a high carb scratch or like a really high density, like almost like muscle gainer, but yeah, the protein, like getting some protein in, getting that high carb mix might be good. Actually, now that you mentioned the recovery, so one other thing that bore fruit from doing this talk a couple of weeks ago was that a local organization called the Recovery Room 360 Athletics has given a bunch of demo equipment. So I actually have a box downstairs that I'm waiting to crack open. I'm a teacher. I'm going into March break. So I've got a big 100-mile week planned for March break. And so I'm cracking that box open. And so check out Outrun the Darkness on Instagram, folks, because you'll see all the nice toys that I get in there.
Nice.
It's my mystery box at this point. So shout out to 360 Athletics. And it's, yeah, that certainly is going to be a thing, especially, I mean, fortunately, I've got people who are doing the drive. And so we'll just chill out back there and get some snooze.
The other piece that's helpful that I actually learned about from Kylie, speaking of Zoe and Kylie, anytime you go beyond like 4-ish hours of an endurance event, adding in some protein, like 5 to 10 grams. I tried that in that 50K that I did through like a piece of some jerky, which gets you some sodium as well. But you could look at doing something like that if that's not something you've experimented with in the 100K. But then I assume that the marathon is going to take you more than 4 hours. So that's another way, so that you don't wake up on Monday feeling like utterly destroyed, like quite destroyed.
Well, and actually, it's a good thing you mentioned the protein, because there's a 100-mile race up here called the Halliburton 100 in September. And for whatever reason, so I'm vegan, by the way. So the burgers, the suggested burgers were vegan burgers.
Got it.
And so
no jerky then.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know what they've got. Tofu jerky. No thanks.
That sounds awful.
I know I'm vegan, but I'm still exceptionally biased against like the tofurkey and made up stuff. So on course, they had Cliff protein bars. And that was, I mean, they're half sugar anyway, but they've got about 20 grams of protein per bar. And I had probably about 10 of those. So I felt I probably had about 200 grams of protein within that 100-miler, but I felt awesome after it. Like I have to say that one of the hacks and unlocks, one of those, I controlled the controllables, and this was one of those happy accidents, was I felt exceptionally good after that race. And so I've tried to be diligent about keeping that protein in.
Yeah.
Creatine's also been exceptionally helpful. So I've started doing that during my training blocks over the past 2 years, and have found that I'm much more durable. Now, last year leading into the 200-miler, I tapered off of it going into the race, knowing that it's great for training, but it's not necessarily suggested for these long efforts. But I may actually just keep it on to keep myself durable through the 142.2K ultra double.
Makes sense. Yeah. Creatine is I saw a tweet today, and it was something to the effect of like, you mean to tell me that this thing helps with athletic performance, cognition, and there's no downside? It's like, yes. Particularly if you're a vegan or vegetarian, it's even better for you than it is for me.
To the point of downsides. So when I started it last year, And again, this is exposure therapy. This is knowing that I'm living a life of recovery. Before going into it, I had to self-talk, because knowing that it could cause bloating, it could cause weight gain. Now, I don't weigh myself, but for about 6 weeks during the onboarding phase, I didn't look in a mirror. I was very intentional. I was like, I need to not look in a mirror. If I get out of the shower, I'm wrapping the towel around my waist, and I self-talked that it's going to make me a better athlete. And also the cognition piece. So my dementia runs in my family. And so if I can use it and see benefits, then I can suggest it to my father, for example, who's in his 70s. And so, but now, having now gone through, this would be the third training cycle onboarding creatine, none of the neuroses, right? It's like, so
That's great.
it works. Exposure therapy, recovery works. It leads to growth. It's ugly and it's messy and it isn't always linear and it's not always fun. And it does involve engaging in all the weird, awful, niggly feelings. But by the end of it, riding the edge of the lightning bolt is certainly worth it.
I love it. John, this has been a blast. I can't wait to follow along with you and your adventures here in the coming weeks. You're doing this in May, if I recall. Is that correct?
Yeah. So it's May 23rd and 24th. 23rd's the Sulphur Springs 100K. 24th is the Ottawa Marathon 2026. So Outrun the Darkness. People can follow along as we do some really cool stuff leading up to the event. And then that's where they'll be able to find out details of where we're going to be releasing the documentary afterwards.
Amazing. Where can we follow you if we want to follow you on these adventures and your training leading up to it?
Yep. So it's at Outrun the Darkness, all one word, on Instagram. And then also, if you want to check it out, the Athletics Ontario Running Podcast, we've had individuals from Ontario and beyond that help it inform what Ontario does. But yeah, that collaboration has been everything to me. Again, it's a family legacy, and whenever I would do these charity challenges, whether it was a Goggins challenge or what have you, when my grandfather was alive, he would always send me a message afterwards and he'd say, I'm exceptionally proud of you. I never thought running could be like this. He was an elite coach. And he's like, what you're doing with running, you're giving back. You're showing me. And he was in his 80s at that point. You're showing me what running can be. And so I think of him when I'm doing stuff like this. And yeah, you know what? I'd make him proud. And so my media award from Athletics Ontario stands right beside his Hall of Fame induction from Athletics Canada. And my grandmother, who's still alive and an absolute badass at the age of 91, that's on her shelf. And she can see two people that think she's amazing right beside her. But also I can honor the work and the legacy that my grandfather started and that my mom's continued, and know that I would be making him happy by having these conversations.
Amazing. Grandparents are the best. I can only imagine how happy hearing that. I'm exceptionally proud of you, Line. Must have made you feel. So what a cool story. Thank you for sharing it with the audience, and we will be rooting for you in a few weeks here.
Thanks very much, Jonathan. I appreciate it.
Of course.